It's not fair. What parent hasn't had a child make this very complaint? Children are acutely attuned to the dynamics of fairness. When they move past the early stage of wanting everything for themselves, you know that stage, mine, 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 and they've just learned that sharing is part of life, they just want to make sure someone else doesn't get something they don't get to have. Sally got 2 scoops of ice cream, but I only got 1. It isn't fair. At some point a little later in life, children do come to accept that sometimes life isn't fair, but they never fully embrace the fact. Unfair remains unfair. Now, our cynical selves can accept the fact of unfairness, but we don't ever get to the point of believing that unfairness is a good thing. But there is one Bible story that illustrates that there is one situation where unfairness is actually a good thing. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Thursday, March 30th, 2023. I know I've told this story before, but I just love telling it because it makes the point so well. When I was in my first year of seminary, I took a spring break trip with my best friend Edward and 2 of his law school buddies. We went to Florida to take in a few spring training baseball games and just generally enjoy ourselves in the Tampa, Florida area. We headed back north on Sunday at the end of break, and the other 3 guys decided that since there was a budding preacher in the car, we should have a little religion on the drive. I doubt they were really looking for anything serious, but the challenge was out there, so I had to deliver. Now, I don't remember why we started talking about today's story. It doesn't appear in the lectionary until late October, and this was March. It may have been that one of them had heard it before and it stuck in their craw. After all, lawyers are all about the idea of fairness, and this story is anything but fair. The story is a parable Jesus tells on the way from Galilee to Jerusalem. Jesus has just encountered the rich young man who wanted to know how he could get into heaven. After he leaves, disappointed, Jesus tells his disciples that it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. This sparks questions among the disciples. Unlike the rich young man, they say, they've given up everything to follow Jesus. What, they ask, will their reward be? This parable is part of Jesus' answer. He says, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. When he went out at 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right.' So they went. When he went out again about noon and about 3 o'clock, he did the same. And about 5 o'clock he went out and found others standing around, and he said to them, 'Why are you standing here idle all day?' They said to him, 'Because no one has hired us.' He said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard.' When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, 'Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first.' When those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. Now, when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, 'These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat.' But he replied to one of them, 'Friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I am generous?' So the first will be last, and the last will be first." You can see why my law school buddies were curious. The landowner in the story paid all his workers the same amount, regardless of how many hours they had worked. In any rational economic system, this would simply be unfair. Those who had worked longer would have a legitimate, valid complaint against the landowner. But here's the deal. This is not about laborers in a vineyard. This is about salvation, which is why the parable of an unfair landowner works so well. It reminds us that when it comes to salvation, God isn't fair. For if God were fair, we would be lost. We don't deserve salvation. It is a free gift of God's unfathomable grace. As the psalmist reminds us, the Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. He will not always accuse, nor will he keep his anger forever. He does not deal with us according to our sins, nor repay us according to our iniquities. I, for one, am glad God is not fair. If God were fair, I would be lost for sure. Tomorrow, the disciples act, well, thoroughly human. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.